so you can understand what's going on. So, identity crisis. I was once working with a client and she had just graduated as a registered massage therapist, so an RMT. And she worked as a waitress in a bar. And she was trying to get this business going. And she kept coming up to me and she's saying, I only get a couple clients a month. And so it's only a few $100s and it's not enough. All my money is coming from waitressing. And I can't see where I'm going to get these clients. It's hard to get this business started. And I'm like, okay. So you're an RMT and your side hustle is the waitress. And she goes, no, I want to be an RMT, but right now I'm a full-time waitress and I'm doing the RMT on the side. And I said, well, that's the problem. You have to be a full-time RMT. And she goes, I know, that's what I'm trying to do. And I said, no, not externally, internally. Internally, you keep saying you're trying to become an RMT, right? You're a waitress. And that's what's going to show up over and over again in your external world. Right? Your income is coming from RMT and your extra cash is coming from waitressing. And she said, no, my income's coming from waitressing, my extra cash is coming from RMT. I said, no, you've got to flip it around, right? And get that right now, it's showing up a certain way. But if you want it to show up the right way, internally, you have to say, I'm an RMT. My money comes from doing RMT work, but then I got this extra cash coming in as a waitress. And I argued with her for about 20 minutes until she finally got it. It was, okay, I'm an RMT. I got it. And then the curious thing was 2 days later, she called me and she said, I just got a call from a massage therapist place or spa in Yorkville, Toronto. Now, if you know Toronto, that's one of the ritziest places in Toronto. And they wanted me to come in and contract with them as one of their RMTs. And I'm like, well, there you go. Now you've got a contract that's going to bring in a lot more money for your business. And now you're an RMT. And she said, yeah, I'm really excited. But here's the weird thing. I didn't contact them. I have no idea how they got my contact information, but I'm going for the interview. And I'm like, isn't that interesting that it just sort of magically worked out that way? And she's like, yeah, this is crazy, but I'm going with it. And she went off and now she's full-time RMT. She's got her own practice and she's doing really well and doesn't have to waitress because she's making so much money as an RMT. But it was that mindset shift that caused everything to change. Not only her internal situation, but somehow these people picked up on it out there somewhere and contacted her. So it's kind of crazy. Another case, I was working with a woman that wanted to start I think it was a Reiki practice. And she'd been trying to start for 2 years. And she'd even posted on job boards, I'm available for Reiki, please contact me. And no one had contacted her. And these posts were just out there. And so when I started talking to her, I found out that she practices with her friends and she gets amazing results. And I said, so why don't you charge your friends? And she said, well, no, they're my friends. I can't charge them. I said, can you charge anyone? And I could just see her body language change. I'm like, okay, is that the problem? You're not allowed to charge for this? And she's like, well, I want to charge. I want this to be my business. And I said, okay, what happens if you do charge? What's going on in there? And as we started talking, it came out. If I charge them and I don't do a good job, what happens then? They've paid for me. I'll feel like crap if I don't give them the value they've just paid for. And so she was actually avoiding having clients because it might be a case, there was no certainty that she might have a bad experience and do poorly with the Reiki or not have any results at all. And she didn't want that. And then we kept talking. So, well, what if I get a bad review? That's going to affect everything. And so now she's avoiding bad reviews. And here's the thing. The subconscious tries to do things the simplest way. The easiest solution is the best solution for the subconscious. And if you're worried about not doing a good job with someone, if you're worried about getting a bad review from someone, the easiest solution is not to have anyone to work with. Problem solved. So that's why her business wasn't taking off. And so we cleared that out. And then she called me about 15 minutes later and she said, someone just contacted me through one of the job boards for Reiki. And I'm like, wow. Okay, so 2 years, no one's contacted her. She gets those beliefs out of the way and people start to contact her. So one more. Oh, maybe not. Stories are contagious. This is what I'm talking about. So stories are contagious in that you're buying stories about how life works from other people. They're buying stories on how life works from you, and you're swapping them all the time. But they're also buying your story as to whether you can have clients, whether you can have success, whether you can be visible, whether you can have money. And so if you think the best solution to not have people judge you is to not have clients. The clients will pick it up out there and they just won't show up. Now, consciously, you're saying, where are my clients? I'm trying to get my clients. I want clients. Unconsciously, you're like, okay, now if I get those clients, I can get judged to hell. So screw it, no clients. And that's what's creating the reality around you. Final story. I was working with another woman and she had 2 business locations, and one was packed every day. And the other one was sparse people. She'd have a couple clients in the morning or a couple clients in the evening, and she was moving back and forth between the 2 locations. Now, they weren't that far away. And she couldn't figure out why one place was packed and one wasn't, when they were basically in the same area, same traffic, same type of people, and different results, same website everyone's going to. And then when I was talking to her, this is a picture of the area where she wasn't getting the people. It's Yonge and Eglinton in Toronto, and there's construction. There's still construction there. It's been like 5 years. And so when she was there, she didn't like that there was construction going on all the time. She didn't like it that it was noisy. The people seemed to be angry about everything that's going on, and she just didn't like the area. And so her subconscious says, well, if we don't want to be in the area, we've got to minimize the time in the area. And that's when she noticed the pattern, is that she never had clients in the middle of the day. They were either in the morning or at the end of the day, so that she could go in, spend a little bit of time in the day, and then have the rest of the day for herself away from the area. And when I made her aware of this and she shifted those beliefs, the next day she was at this location, back-to-back clients all day. So you are affecting the world with your stories. You just probably don't know it. But here's the cool thing. Your current life is just a first draft, and you get unlimited drafts. And what we're going to talk about now is what you're worried about money and success. And as I bring up things that are most common for people that they are worried about, we're going to start shifting that so that you can see, oh, that's one of the things I'm worried about. How do I shift it? How do I get out of that? And that can actually cause your business reality to change, possibly by the end of this workshop. Okay, so let's go. So why don't you want it? Why don't you want the success? Why don't you want the money? This is a question a lot of people don't realize they should be asking themselves. So sometimes you think, well, if I have a lot of money, will I stop caring about the people around me? Right? If I have a lot of money, will it corrupt me? If I have a lot of money, will it bring more problems into life? If you ever said more money, more problems, you are creating that in your life. So then your 2 outcomes are you start to make more money and then more and more problems show up, or to avoid the problems, if that's the priority, the money doesn't show up. And the thing is, it isn't more money, more problems, right? It may be for some people, but you get to choose what happens. You get to choose what's going to happen as you get more and more money. What if it's that, oh, if I have lots and lots of money, people will come up to me and say, hey, I know you've got money. Can you give me some? Can you invest in my project? Can I borrow some? And you don't want to deal with those people. You don't have to say no to those people, right? It's really annoying to have all these people ask you for money. Simple solution, don't have money. Right? And it's that simple though, but it's not that you think, okay, I'm not gonna have money, so I don't have to deal with that. Your subconscious says, okay, I have to make sure I stop this person from making money so I don't have to deal with that. So I want you to think about what's going to be different in your life if you have money. What have you come up with? What have you thought, oh, I'm going to have to deal with this, right? It's all these things that are showing up in your subconscious, the things that you just pop into your head once in a while and you think, oh, yeah, I hope that doesn't happen. Well, as soon as you hope that doesn't happen, you try not to make that happen. And this is the interesting is when you're willing to let that happen and just deal with it, more can show up in your life. Okay. Why you can't have it. This is usually from parental stories that you've bought from them and you're now living in it. That kind of money isn't for people like us. Only the rich can get that because they're all connected and we don't have access to it. Or you can't have it because you are Black, or you can't have it because you're a girl, or you can't have it because you came from this place, or you can't have it because your language isn't that good. All these why you can't have it, and it's all crap. You can have whatever the hell you want if you believe you can get it, right? And so you created this wall. You think it's a physical wall, but you've created the wall. And I'll give you an example, just talking about, because you're Black. When I was young, I started at the age of 19, I started to travel. And I got stopped at the border every single time. And I would get stopped with friends that were not Black, and they would stop me. And I was like, aren't you going to check them? They're like, no, just you. I'm like, huh, isn't that interesting that you're checking the Black guy? And so this went on. And one time, I actually, when we were in Europe, when we were traveling, the guy pulled me over and I said, is this the Black check? And he just looked at me and he paled. And I said, look, let's just be honest, because I keep getting stopped. Is this the Black check? He goes, like, I'm just doing my job. So I just want you to admit it. Just say it to me. He goes, yes, I have to stop both the Black people. Okay, there we go. Proof. And one time I was even traveling with my buddy and they ripped apart his van. He says, I cross this border all the time. They never check me. I'm like, welcome to being with me, right? And so I knew that every time I crossed the border, that would happen. And then one day I realized, wait, what if this is a story? What if it happened one time, I created a story around it, and now I'm repeating that story over and over again? And then it made me realize that every time the story happens, even though I hate it, even though I have to get my bags checked or I have to go in and get personally checked or whatever, it's a little bit of me that's happy because I'm right. And this is the thing, people love to be right more than they like to be successful, rich, happy, in wonderful relationships, and even healthy. And I said, you know what? I am getting off on telling people about these adventures over and over again and seeing their reactions. There's a charge to that, and I'm feeding off that charge. What if I let that all go? So I said, you know what? I'm done with this story. And since that day, that was 7 years ago, I have not been checked at the border since. I'm still Black, but I'm not being checked. Okay. So that was a barrier that was there. I guess it was a sort of reverse barrier, whatever. But in any case, once I stepped out of the story, things changed. So you have reasons why you can't have things. And when you let those reasons go, when you become the exception to everyone else's story, you can do things that seem like magic to them. And that's the wonderful thing about learning how stories work and functioning outside of the stories. Okay, what will people think of you? If you're all successful and have lots of money, what are people going to think of you? And the first thing that comes up, it's judgment. That's what people think of you. And it's amazing how much people try to avoid judgment, okay? And what people don't realize is that thinking you're wonderful is also judgment. There's good judgment and bad judgment. Everyone thinks judgment is a bad thing. And sometimes good judgment can be as devastating as bad judgment. So let me give you an example. Suppose that I'm talking to you and then I say, oh my God, you know what? You are perfect, right? I love everything about you. Don't ever change. And you take that in. Usually you're like, people give me bad compliments or say bad things about me, but this is great. And you take that in. Well, now you've just screwed yourself, because it's not that you now think you're perfect. It's now, I think you're perfect. And if you really like that, you are now trapped by what I think perfect is. And you have to keep adjusting yourself to be perfect in my eyes, right? And if multiple people say things about you, you have to keep adjusting yourself for multiple people. And that can be tiring. That can be exhausting. You're no longer being you. You're being what other people think perfect is when they tell you, I think you're perfect. So that's where even good judgment can cripple you. But bad judgment, you know how it works, right? There's two major things people do with this bad judgment. And the third thing is what you should be doing. So the first thing people do is someone gives them bad judgment and they say, oh, hell no, that's not me. And you try to push back on that judgment. And so if you look at it in terms of energy, they're pushing against you and you're like, no, that's not who I am. And you push back against them. And it can become physical in that you can actually physically start yelling at them, or some people have gotten into fights or whatever it is. It can become mental in that you get a bad review and you say, why could they say that about me? Oh my God. And you're just pushing back against that judgment. And you can't really do something bad to them, especially if it's like a Google review, but you're expending all this energy and just frustration. And it's like, oh my God, why would they think about, how can I make them understand I'm a good person, right? Maybe that was a misunderstanding, maybe something messed up. No, it's their fault. They don't know what's up. All this stuff just comes out, but it's you pushing back against them, right? So the other thing that could happen is instead of pushing against their judgment, you take their judgment in. Oh my God, you suck. You're horrible at this. Oh my God, you're right. I suck. I'm sorry. I don't mean to suck. And now you're trapped in that judgment that you suck. And this type of stuff happens, especially when you're a child. your parents are telling you all sorts of things and you're taking it in. So if your parents told you you're a waste of space, you're good for nothing, you can take that in, and you can even be running that now, even though you consciously think differently, and it's causing you to get bad results. But when you're in arguments with other people, especially authority figures, you tend to just take what they say, right? My advice for everyone is always keep your authority filter on. And by authority filter, I mean, what we do is we have a filter where we listen to what's coming in and we say, oh, is that true or is that not true? Okay, you know, I don't agree with that. Or yes, I do agree with that. Or let me think about that. But if we're in the presence of an authority, which could be a doctor, which could be our boss, which could be a teacher, which could be someone we admire, or which could be the majority of people, then we turn that off and say, oh, well, they must be right. And they could be telling you complete and utter bullshit. But you turn off your authority filter and now they're right. And then you have that locked in you. So you don't want to take on judgments. You don't want to push back on judgments. And that's what most people do. They take them on or they push them back. So then what's the alternative here? The alternative is just to let the judgment come by, right? So I hate you, you suck. Oh, well, thank you. And then you just let that judgment go by. You're the most wonderful person I've met. Oh, thank you. And then you let that judgment go by. You're still present. You're not going to just ignore someone says you're wonderful and say, oh yeah, whatever. It's just like, oh, well, thank you. Acknowledge the judgment, let it go by, right? Good or bad, acknowledge the judgment, let it go by. And that makes things so much easier because now you're not at the will of other people. You're not trying to please other people. You're just being you. And being you is so much easier. Okay. Now, when you are successful, you're going to become more visible. And that means more judgment. And that's why it's important to get this now, right? Because if you want to grow in success, there's going to be so much more judgment out there. And I have friends that celebrate like having trolls. Like, I got my first troll. You what? Yeah. And I'm like, and you're happy about that? It's like, yeah, it means that I'm so visible that I'm inspiring a whole bunch of people. And there's a few people that hate me. And this is the other thing is when you're trying to get the fewest amount of people to hate you, then you're going to create the fewest amount of people in your business, in your life. But if you just look and say, well, I'm willing to have 10,000 people love me and 1,000 people hate me, or 1,000,000 people love me and 1,000 people hate me, or whatever it is, then as you keep growing in the amount of people that love you, you're going to grow in the amount of people that hate you, but it's going to be a smaller ratio as long as you're doing the right thing, as long as you are being a good person and not screwing people around. And that's my recommendation. Don't screw people over. But this is what most people do is they don't go by the ratio. They go by the number. They want to minimize the number of people that are judging them badly. Don't do that, right? Because every time you're focused on that number of people that are treating you badly or judging you badly, then you're denying all the people that are benefiting from you and your services having that service because you're not going to be visible enough for them to see it. You're going to keep yourself small. And you've got to look at it that way. Are you willing to be judged badly by a few people in order that you can help way more people, to help them with your service, with your product, to uplift their lives, to solve their problems, whatever it is? And the answer there should be yes. Okay. What must you sacrifice for success, right? And gaming is one of the big things. I remember talking to one of my friends and he said, you know, the success just isn't coming in. And I don't know why. You know, I put in a bunch of hours yesterday. I said, how many hours did you put in? He goes, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. I'm like, you didn't even do a full 8-hour day? And he goes, well, it's my own business, right? So there's no commute. There's not, like, no, you didn't work 8 hours. Like, what did you do last night? And he goes, oh, you know, we played StarCraft till 3. I'm like, oh, and do you play it a lot? He goes, yeah, we have a group that we play every night. I'm like, huh. And so you're spending more hours actually playing the video game than doing your work, and you're wondering why the work isn't progressing, why the success isn't coming. But a lot of people don't realize that. You're spending how much time playing video games, surfing the net, watching Netflix, right? Being on TikTok and YouTube. And if you're willing to start sacrificing those things, you don't have to cut them out. But if you're willing to spend less time on them and more time in your business, then you're going to have better results in your business. But are you willing to sacrifice that time? Right? Are you willing to get up earlier? Are you willing to work a bit harder? And I'm not saying you have to work hard all the time, but are you willing to? And when you're willing to make those sacrifices, things will show up. But here's the other side of it. You don't have to sacrifice. You just have to be willing to. And this is where people can get screwed up, because if you feel you have to sacrifice, you have to create conditions in which sacrifice is necessary. So if you have to sacrifice for your kids, I've heard that all the time, you have to sacrifice for your kids. And I'm like, no. And they look at me and go, what? You're not going to sacrifice for your kids? I'm like, if it's a situation where sacrifice is needed, then I can choose to sacrifice, but I don't have to sacrifice. And they look at me like, what are you talking about? I said, okay, what if I create a reality where I have so much money and so much free time, I don't have to sacrifice for my kids? And they looked at me like, wait, what? And it's like that melted their brain. Because number one, that's not where these people that are saying you have to sacrifice for your kids are coming from. They're coming from this place where I don't have time, I don't have money, I have to make sacrifices for my kids. But on the flip side, they also get a charge. They're in pride, they're in this joy of, I had to give this up for my kids. And if you no longer have to do that anymore, you can feel hollow. You can feel like you're not having as much value in your kids' lives or as a person or parent because you're not sacrificing. But that's all just a story, okay? You don't have to sacrifice for your kids. You have to be willing to sacrifice your kids given the right conditions. But if you say, you know what, I'm also willing to just have so much money and success and free time that I never have to sacrifice for my kids. I can run my business in a short amount of time, and then I can spend the rest of the time with my kids. Wouldn't that be a better story to be in? Okay, and what will it take? Going on with, are you willing to? What I hear a lot, and I just sort of said it earlier, you have to work hard to succeed. No, okay? Again, you have to be willing to work hard to succeed, okay? I'm willing to work hard to succeed. There are days where I work my ass off, but there are also days where I sit on my ass and money drops in my bank account because I'm willing to work completely hard for days on end to get the stuff that needs to be done, but I'm also willing to do absolutely nothing and still have money show up, and I'm willing to have everything in between show up. And as a result, that's what happens. And the thing is, when you're in the space, and you can see more often that you don't have to work as hard to still have money, you'll find ways to be more efficient, to work less, to have the money flow in more, because you don't have to work hard to succeed. And again, there's that pride thing. When I was working corporate way back, I would work 7 days a week. I would do work at night. And, you know, I could feel myself burning out, but at the same time, there was like, look how hard I'm working. And I talked to my friends, oh yeah, we were on this project. We had to go over time on it. Like we were doing all these all-nighters, and they were like, holy crap. But I could see them, the reaction, I was feeding off that. Wow. And I'm like, yeah, look at me work hard. And so you get this charge out of working hard that you don't need to. Nowadays, it's just like, I got to work hard. Okay, I'll do it. I don't get the charge out of it. It's just something I have to do. I get the charge out of the results I get in my business, whether I work hard or whether I don't. I get the charge out of seeing people succeed, seeing their realities shift. But whether it's hard to do that or not hard to do it, doesn't matter to me. I'll allow it to show up however it wants. Now, what if you stop thinking you had to work hard to succeed? Again, be willing to work hard. But what if you didn't have to work hard? How would your life change in that situation? What are you doing now? Think about it. Just really think about it. What are you doing now that once you're done doing all this work, you're like, yeah, look at me work hard. What if you didn't have to do that anymore? What if you could get out of that addiction to that feeling? Think about how your life's going to start to change. What will it do to you? So this is a common thing with, what is it? Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, or when you get a lot of money, it's just going to make you greedy, or you're going to take advantage of people, you're going to have corrupt dealings. So this is the thing about this. Again, these are stories that are out there. And I have friends that have lots of money that are wonderful, wonderful people. And what happens is that as you gain more money and success, it doesn't corrupt you. It gives you freedom. Right? And as it gives you freedom, you become more of who you really are. So if you're a good person to start off with and you get more money and success, you become a better person. And so my friends that have come up the ladder like me, that are doing great things, They're just doing more great things. But see, this isn't a great story to talk about, right? Because people like the more dramatic stories and the stuff where things change and where it's intrigue. So when you hear, oh, you know how Joe was doing his job way back and he was helping all these people, he's just doing more of that with more money. Oh, okay, not that interesting. But then you get Teresa, and Teresa was not a good person, and she came into a lot of money. She started creating a lot of success, and now she's a total bitch. And that's a better story. Look what Teresa's doing now that she's got money. She's really screwing people over. So that's something you talk about. And those are the stories that start to stick. But then there's a third story, and that's of Phil. And Phil wasn't that nice a guy, but he was pretending to be that nice a guy because given his money situation and the fact that he had to work and get along with people, he had to push down the fact that he hated to work with people and that he had to be polite and that he just wanted to do bad things. And when he finally became successful, he started to show his true self. And so that's where we get this idea, oh, it all corrupted him. No, it didn't corrupt him. It pulled out the real him. So now, if you're worried now, because I know a couple of you just went, oh, what if my real me is a bad person? If you're wondering if your real me is a bad person, you're probably a good person because you wouldn't wonder. You'd be like, no, it's fine. But even like, if you know you're a good person, there's also that, okay, you've been doing it. You've been showing it, right? Okay. So allow yourself to have the money and know that it's just going to make you that better person. It's going to expand your reach. It's going to improve your life. It's going to help you improve the lives of other people by having that success and money. Because remember, when you're successful and you get really big success, you bring a whole bunch of people up with you. They can't come up with you if you're not successful. How will it affect others? This is another thing. This comes about jealousy. This comes about, I don't know why I'm talking about that. This comes through abandonment. And for example, I had a client that she was building her business and it would go up in little spurts, but she couldn't figure out what was going on and why it couldn't consistently go on. And after talking to her, I found out that she had a little sister and she never wanted to outshine her little sister. She was doing better than her, but she didn't want to do too much better than her. So when we traced it down, whenever her sister's business increased, her business would increase to compensate. So she'd stay the same distance above her sister without making her sister feel shameful. And the truth of the matter is the sister wasn't even paying attention to what she was doing. She was just doing her business. So the connection she made that I have to make sure I don't shame her sister was all her story, all internal. And when she got out of it, her business could then flow. Right? There's also, what if I become successful and have to leave people behind? Well, if you're worried about leaving people behind, you won't create success. Because again, that's your priorities. I don't want to leave people behind. But here's the thing, the more successful you become, the more inspirational you become. Now, yes, there is likely the chance that people will be left behind, not because you're abandoning them, but because you're going up in success, which means you're going up energetically in frequency, and they're staying where they are. So when you're at a higher frequency than them and you're pulling apart, they're going to have two choices. They're going to get angry and frustrated or jealous or something, and they're going to justify staying where they are, which means you're just going to end up separating. Or they're going to get inspired, they're going to see what you're doing, and then they're going to start coming up with you. Now, if they're not going to move and you're not going to move because they're not going to move, then you're stuck. So you have to be willing to let some people go. But the other thing is you may be inspiring all these people to come up with you. This is how you're affecting other people. You have to be willing for them to get jealous. You have to be willing for them to get angry. And here's the big thing is that oftentimes when this starts, when the success process starts and you see people getting uncomfortable, even if they are supporting you, you can see them getting uncomfortable. It affects you. You don't want them to be uncomfortable. So you undo everything to make them comfortable. So now everyone's comfortable and no one's successful and probably no one's happy. You have to be willing to just let them all get uncomfortable. You're going to get uncomfortable too, because success is going to feel uncomfortable when it starts to show up for you in big ways, and ride that out until you're comfortable in a new level of success. Then you repeat it, and then you repeat it, and then you repeat it. People are going to come in and out of your lives. The people at the higher levels are going to be more supportive, more loving, more encouraging. And the people at the lower levels are either going to stay where they are or start coming along for the ride. But trust me, it's going to be a fun ride. And the big one, what will happen after? So there are three major fears your subconscious has, and one of them is the unknown. So if your mind doesn't know what's coming next, it will not let you get to the point where the what's coming next happens. So this is an interesting thing because a lot of people don't get this. If your plan is to build a business and get it to $1 million a year, let's say, then if you don't have a plan for what comes after the $1 million, and that's it, just that's where your goals end, that's where basically where your life plan ends, you won't get there because your subconscious hates the unknown. It is terrified of the unknown. So it'll say, no, we can't get to that because I don't know what comes next. So I have to make sure you don't hit that $1 million. And consciously what happens is, why is this not working? Why do we keep failing? What is going on here? Unconsciously, it's like we're staying away from that unknown. This is good. So start to plan where things are going. Start to plan where you're going to end up, even after this initial success run. What I do with a lot of my clients is we plan out their whole life up to the day they die, right? And it's not all like, you have to do this. A lot of it is just fictional, but it gives the subconscious something to fall back and go, oh, then we're just going to do that. And that, just doing that causes more success to show up. It's really cool. Okay, so here are the other biggest obstacles. Talked about fear. The second one is guilt. And the third one is shame. And it's not even guilt and shame. It's the fear of the possibility of guilt and shame. I've worked with thousands of people at this point, and I can tell you with surety that these two things stop people from creating success, happiness, health, great relationships over and over and over again. So how does it work? So let's say shame. You want to get up and do public speaking. Okay. And you book a session or an event, you get in there, and then you start thinking, well, what happens when I get up on stage? What if they boo me? What if they judge me? What if they think, oh my God, what is that person doing there? That person does not deserve to be up there. Then you're going to feel shame when that happens, right? You don't want to feel shame. Shame is one of the lowest frequency emotions you can have. So you want to avoid that shame. Now, you don't even know what's going to happen when you get up there. You could be preparing your speech. You could know it backwards and forward, but you don't know how that audience is going to react. They could love you. They could go, ah, you're okay. They could hate you. You don't know. But the possibility is that you could feel shame. So what happens in your physical world? You back out. You get sick. You get the times mixed up. Your car doesn't start the day of you because you can affect physical things around you. Pointed that out. Right? And so anything that can avoid the shame avoids the shame. And oftentimes you could sit there going, oh, like it was out of my control. It just happened. Right. So I used to do track and field, and I would kick ass in the 800 meter. But when they signed me up for the competitions, I would always get sick. I'd always get the flu the day of, and I would frustrate. I'm like, why do I always get sick? I want to be in these competitions. I'd love to come in and place in these competitions. No, because the possibility is I could end up last. Right? So my subconscious said, no, screw it. If you might end up last, let's just be sick. Don't have to go through it. Don't have to worry about it. You're fine just being frustrated for a little while and then forgetting about it, rather than actually going through shame. Although I might have won. I don't know. I never made it. Okay. And then there's guilt. If I have a lot of success, I'll feel guilty because I left people behind. Or if I try to create this project and it takes up all my time, I'll feel guilty about not spending time with other people, right? So, and this is the thing, the project may get done really quickly, but you think, well, if it takes a lot of time, I'm going to be away from people, I'm going to feel guilty. So again, it's the possibility of guilt. So what happens? You just never do the project, right? or whatever the situation is where the guilt is possible, you avoid it. And oftentimes it's not a conscious decision. Things just show up, right? People cancel on you, you get sick, something breaks, people reschedule, like all this stuff happens. But underlying, it's you get to avoid the guilt. You get to avoid the shame. I just had a conversation with the client today, and it was about her services. She's trying to start a program and she's not getting the people in. And I said, well, do you think the program has a lot of value? She goes, it has a lot of value. And I said, okay. And what's the big problem? It's just like, well, what if they don't see the value? And then what if they walk out and they didn't get the value they could have got, but I tried my best? I'll feel both guilt on their part and shame for myself. And I'm like, okay, but you haven't even created this. And this thing is, this is something, this is a talent you have. This is a skill set you've been using for years and years and years. You just never done it in a program format. So just because you're doing it in a program format doesn't mean you're any worse at it. It's still you. It's still your stuff. It's still your experience. And when that finally sunk in, she just felt lighter. She's like, you're right. I'm just making a big deal out of this and I don't need to be. So how often are you trying to avoid the possibility of guilt and shame? Okay. And here's the number one way this shows up is no. Okay. People don't realize how empowering saying no is, but you often don't want to say no because you're going to feel guilty. Can you help me, please? No. Right. So in order not to feel guilty, you say yes to things you don't want to do. Right. You're trying to run your business. People are asking you for all sorts of things. And you're like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Now your business is falling behind because you're helping out with people. Right. Or you're in your business and they're asking for more than they paid for. But you don't want to be that person that says, oh, no, you haven't paid for that. You're going to have to pay me more because you'll feel guilty or you'll feel shame for having to ask for more money. And so you say yes. And then you're giving all this extra value for free and you're wondering why you're not making money and your business isn't more of a success. And then everyone else that's coming in is hearing what you're doing with these other people, right? And then you have to give them the exact same thing. You're going to feel guilty because you gave it to the one person, you didn't give it to everyone else. But if you know you have value and people say, can I get this extra? You say, well, it's going to cost this much. And there'll be no guilt or shame, right? And remember, guilt and shame, as much as it feels like it's reactions, they are choices, right? In the moment, it feels like a reaction, but it's all your programming makes it a choice. And I'll give you an example of how that works. Imagine there's a guy and his buddy comes up behind him and pants him, just pulls his pants right down to the ground, including the underwear. Now he's on complete display. One type of person would go, oh my God, grab his pants, pull him up, run away, completely shamed, embarrassed. And he could even be traumatized for life after that, right? From that one incident, especially if they were doing it when they were younger, because then the trauma hits a little bit bigger. And that's a reaction. It seems like it's a reaction, but that's how he was built. That's what he's been programmed to. Because number two guy standing there, he gets pantsed, underwear and pants around his ankle. And he looks down, looks at his buddy that just did it, went, really? Reaches down, pulls up his pants, continues his conversation. You know there are people that'll do that. Same exact situation. And then it can go the other way too. Number three guy, pants come down, okay? And then he looks down, looks at his friend, looks around, he goes, take a good look. I'm going to be pulling it up soon. This is your last chance. No shame whatsoever. Pulls up his pants, continues on. So this is the thing. It's all programmed into you. And with the no's, whenever you feel guilty about saying no, whenever the shame comes about saying no, that's on you. But here's the insidious part, is if you feel guilt and shame about saying no, your subconscious can come up with an excuse for you to say no so that you don't feel guilty. And the biggest excuses out there are, I have no money, I have no time, or I'm too sick, right? And this is what happens. It's not that you don't have money because you can't figure out how to make money. You don't have money so that people can't ask you for money, or they can't ask you to do things that require money because I'm sorry, I can't afford it. You're completely booked up in your time all the time because you don't like it when people say, can I get you to do something? But now you're like, I'm sorry, I'm way too busy. But you've created the busyness so that you don't have to say no without feeling guilty. But that's affecting everything in your life because you can't get shit done because you're so busy. And it can even be illness. This was one of mine. I used to be really sick. And I found out it was because I thought I needed to be responsible for everyone in my life. And I had to go out there and when they needed help, help them. And it was overwhelming for me. So I created illness so that if I'm lying in bed sick and people say, can you help me? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm too sick. And it's not like I'm saying no, like, no, I don't want to do it. It's like, oh, I can't, I'm sorry. It's still a no, but there's no guilt. So here's what I was talking about, the willingness. Okay. So you're in the middle here. What you love, that success, the money, the love, everything is on the right side. What you hate, the bankruptcy, heartbreak, failure is all on the left. And most people are willing to have anything from where they are now to everything on the right side. Willing. Well, why wouldn't you? Because it's all good. But they're only willing to go a little bit to the left side. I don't want to lose a lot of money. I don't want to be shamed. I don't want to have my heart broken, whatever it is. But how it actually works is when you look at this from the universe point of view, I'm like more of a spiritual guy, duality doesn't exist. So however much resistance you're putting on one side, you're putting on the other side. It balances out. So if you're in heavy resistance to bad things happening, you're only going to get small amounts of good things happening. Right? And so if you think about this and see what you're resisting, you're going to see what's happened. Now, when you're willing to have the worst thing come out, then you can also have the best thing come out. And here's the thing that's really cool. When you're willing to go through all the crap, when you're willing to go through hardship, you're willing to work hard, whatever it is, you tend to get the good stuff. You don't actually have to go through the bad stuff. Sometimes you do, sometimes, but most of the time you've removed all the resistance and only the good stuff shows up. So that's an important thing to remember. And here's the other thing. When you have to do a task, like let's say you have to do a project, and this is going to be a big project, it's going to take up a lot of time. You don't know if it's going to be successful or not. And there's all this stress involved in doing that project. And you don't want to go through that stress. And it could be a conversation you have to have. It could be a situation you have to go through. You think about the stress, getting up on stage, stress. So in order to do that, you avoid it. And so now you've got a little bit of stress because you didn't do it, because you think you should do it. You got to get around to it. But it's only a little bit of stress. So that's much preferable. But then what happens is you do that for something else and you keep a little bit of stress and a little bit of stress. Everything you're avoiding, everything you say, I'll do it later, not the right time. This is what's happening. And this is all taking up cycles in your brain, like open tabs on a browser. So eventually you are completely stressed all the time. You are tired, you are worn out, and you haven't done anything because it's all the stuff that you should be doing, right? It's all this procrastination in your life. It's all the reasons you're coming up why the success isn't there. And meanwhile, if you start going through them one by one, they'll start to drop off. You'll go through stress for a while, but then it'll drop off. But here's the other thing. It's also perceived stress. You think this is the amount of stress you go through, but when you actually do it, it might be this much, or it might be this much. But instead you think it's going to be that, and you do this instead. And that goes on forever, forever, until that thing gets done. So what I'm encouraging you to do now is to be willing to go through that stress, to be willing to go from that smaller place to that bigger place. And it's going to affect everything in your life. Be willing, okay? And remember, that doesn't mean you have to do these things. You have to be willing to do these things. And you'll start to see things show up. You'll start to see magic happen in your life. And if you've been taking in what I've said, you probably have felt a shift during this. And that's you releasing some of those beliefs that we're talking about, maybe all of the ones we came across. But see how you feel after this workshop. And if you have any more questions, I'm one of the success coaches at this event. Come out, see me, and we'll take it a little step further. What I want you to do is find more joy in your business, okay? Business doesn't have to be hard. A lot of people think you have to work hard. It's got to be grueling. Business can be fun. And escape the freedom of your beliefs, okay? You don't need to be trapped into them. Now is the time to get free, to do things differently, to not follow what the people who are struggling are doing, but to come into a new space of your own that's easier, that's lighter. Sure, there's going to be times you got to work hard, but most of the time it's going to be fun. Business can be fun. You're allowed. And this is it. It's going to be easy when you know how. I'm not talking about how to do your business. I'm talking about how to get out of those beliefs. I'm talking about how to live in ease, how to not get affected by judgments, how to just take those steps without fear of guilt or shame. So that's what I have to tell you. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you enjoyed this workshop. My name is Shiraz. I am a reality shifting specialist, and you have an amazing day. Thank you.
Get rich and be a millionaire. My top student made $1.2 million on one deal from what I taught him about investing in real estate. Another student made $400,000. She increased her net worth $1.5 million from what I taught her. I promise you this, making this type of money will change your life. Would it make you happy if someone else paid for your next family vacation? Damn, you're saying, Terry, yes, that would make me happy. If someone else, because you own real estate, would buy you a new automobile or pay your kids' college education, would that make you happy? And I know you're saying, yes, Terry, that would make me really happy. Hey, look at this. If someone else could pay your house, okay, pay off your home, buy a new home, just because you learned how to invest, make money, and build wealth in real estate, would that make you happy? Hell yes, Terry. That would make me extremely happy. This is my episode of how I built generational wealth and achieved financial success in 3 minutes or less. Follow me, ladies and gentlemen. Follow me. The rich don't have jobs. You guys know that. The rich don't work for money. They make money work for them. You guys have heard that. But no one has shown you how it's done. I'm doing it right now. I'm showing you right now.
Management, develop goal skills that will actually help you to get them accomplished and to help you to keep yourself a priority while doing it all. If you are ready for a true sense of purpose, decreasing stress while optimizing your success.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Dr. David Banks, and I empower people to succeed from within so that they can live out their destiny. It is truly an honor to be with you, my friend. My whole goal is to not only encourage you, to motivate you, but I really want to share something that will truly change the trajectory